Did the Las Vegas Aces actually win against the Indiana Fever, or did the referees hand them the game? Because when A'ja Wilson racks up what feels like 37 uncalled fouls, mostly moving screens, elbows, and blatant shoves on Lexie Hull, you have to wonder if this was basketball or stage management. In this breakdown, we're exposing the full picture. Wilson's stat padding, the free throw imbalance, the missed calls, and the strange whistles that turned a fierce Fever performance into an officiating scandal. Fans are calling it a stolen series, and once you hear what Lexie Hull said afterward, you'll understand exactly why. How does one player get her own personal rulebook while everyone else is forced to play by the actual one? That's the question hanging over this entire semifinal series, because when you look closely at the numbers between A'ja Wilson and Aaliyah Boston, the pattern stops resembling coincidence and starts looking like orchestration. Across 5 games, Wilson waltzed to the free throw line 26 times. 26. Meanwhile, Boston, who battles for every rebound, absorbs hits in the paint, and gets mauled on nearly every post-up, reached the line just 17 times. And here's the kicker. Nearly half of those came in a single outing, Game 4, when the Aces started intentionally fouling in the final minute just to drag out the clock. Take away that desperate sequence, and the disparity between Wilson and Boston's free throws becomes indefensible. Now rewind to Games 1 and 2, and things get flat-out absurd. Aaliyah Boston, the Fever's interior anchor, and arguably the most skilled post player in the league, didn't shoot a single free throw in either matchup. Not one. If you watched those games, you saw Wilson drawing fouls off phantom contact, grazing touches, incidental bumps, while Boston was getting hammered in the lane without a whisper from the whistle. How do you explain that? You can't. This isn't about different playing styles. This is about selective enforcement. The ball ran through Boston all night, yet the refs acted like contact magically disappeared whenever she touched it. 2 straight games without a single call? That's not randomness, that's preference. And the foul numbers tell an even uglier story. Over 5 games, Boston was tagged with 19 fouls. Wilson? Just 14. Which is strange when you realize who was actually playing defense. Boston spent nearly every possession guarding Wilson directly, contesting her drives, absorbing her elbows, staying vertical on every shot. Meanwhile, Wilson was often switched onto the Fever's smaller players to save energy, rarely contesting Boston head-on. Yet somehow, Boston ended up with more fouls. How does that happen? And look at these moving screens. She totally destroys Lexie Hull, and guess what? They get a 3-point bucket off that play. They didn't call that an offense foul. Look at this one. You see how she sticks her leg out? They wonder why they get wide open layups and 3-pointers. Look at the room it makes when you set an illegal screen. That's why it's illegal. Another one. Look at this. She moves over and just enough time for her teammate to get a 3-pointer off. Watch how she does this. She thrusts her hips at the end. Look at it. Thrust her hips to get that extra space, and she gets an open layup. Like I said, 4 offensive fouls they didn't call, and they got 10 points. Rewatch the film and it becomes crystal clear. Wilson was setting moving screens like it was part of her job description, shuffling her feet, sticking her hips out, throwing shoulders into defenders to free Jackie Young or Chelsea Gray. Multiple analysts reviewing the tape counted 37 uncalled moving screens from Wilson throughout the series. 37. That's almost 8 per game, and not one of them blew the whistle. Meanwhile, Boston could barely set a clean pick without getting flagged. The double standard was so blatant you could feel the frustration bleeding through the Fever's bench. It's like the game turned into a one-way street. Fouls stacked up on Boston, while Wilson glided through untouched. Boston kept her hands high, played straight-up defense, and still got called. Wilson dropped shoulders on entry passes, hooked arms on rebounds, and barreled through defenders with no consequence. You can call it tough officiating all you want, but at some point, it starts looking like protection. The kind that preserves a narrative instead of the integrity of the game. So it's hard for us to find flow when there's a foul call every 10 seconds. I mean, it just really is. And then when they're at the free throw line, we can't get up and down the floor. And that's a challenge. They were much more aggressive and physical defensively. We didn't counter that with our off-ball actions or with our back cuts So they took us out of our comfort zone. I mean, offense is about rhythm, it's about timing, it's about spacing. We allowed them to do that, and they kept us from doing it. And that's the uncomfortable question nobody at the WNBA office seems willing to ask. Is the league's self-declared superstar being shielded? Because based on this series, Wilson's so-called special whistle doesn't sound like fan fiction. It's supported by data. Look at it from top to bottom. 0 free throws for Boston in the opening 2 games. 17 total compared to Wilson's 26. 19 fouls on Boston, just 14 on Wilson, despite her constant illegal screens. 37 instances documented on film, where the MVP broke the rules and walked away untouched. Every single number points in the same direction, and it's never the Fever's. And when you stack those statistics against what actually unfolded in the clutch moments of Game 5, the picture goes from suspicious to outrageous. That's when the favoritism stopped hiding behind the box score and started altering the outcome right in front of everyone watching. It wasn't just about missed calls anymore. It was about how the whistles shaped the final score. The Fever didn't lose because they played poorly. They lost because every time they built momentum, the whistle dragged them back. And when Lexie Hall started speaking out about what she endured guarding Wilson, the elbows, the off-ball shoves, the moving picks that never got called, suddenly fans realized this wasn't just a bad night for officiating. It was a pattern, a protection plan, and the Fever were on the wrong end of it. Game 5 was supposed to be a showcase. 2 generational stars going toe-to-toe. Aaliyah Boston versus A'ja Wilson, battling for a trip to the finals. But instead of a classic playoff duel, fans got a 3-hour showdown between the Indiana Fever and the referees. The night that should have decided who was the better player turned into a lesson on who the officials wanted to keep on the floor. This wasn't competition, it was control. The first jaw-dropping moment came in the 3rd quarter. Boston set a screen at the top of the key. Clean, firm, feet planted like a statue. It was textbook. But then came the whistle. Offensive foul. Moving screen, they said. The replay told a different story. No shuffle, no lean, no advantage gained. Just a legal play wiped away for reasons nobody could explain. Even the commentators fell silent. That phantom call didn't just take away a possession. It changed the entire rhythm of the game. From that moment on, Boston had to tiptoe around every move, afraid that another invisible foul would send her to the bench. This is considered a foul in the conference finals of the WNBA. Oh, you mean A'ja Wilson's on the opposing team? It's all starting to add up and make sense. You have to cheat to win basketball games. Then came Megan Gustafson's Oscar-winning performance. Boston caught the ball in the post, turned into her move, and Gustafson launched backward like she'd been shot out of a cannon. Slow-motion replay showed it perfectly. Minimal contact, barely a brush. But of course, the whistle blew. Another foul on Boston. 2 bogus calls, back-to-back, each one stripping her ability to play with confidence. Suddenly, her physicality, the very thing that makes her dominant, became a liability. Meanwhile, Wilson continued barreling through defenders untouched, collecting free throws like frequent flyer miles. And then came the clincher. Late in regulation, Boston positioned herself under the rim for a defensive rebound. She boxed out perfectly. Arms up, solid stance, textbook form. Jackie Young nudged into her, stumbled slightly, and somehow Boston got called for the foul. Number 6, disqualified. The scoreboard was tied, the tension was high, and the Fever's defensive anchor was forced to watch from the bench as her team's season slipped away. The building should have erupted in playoff chaos. Instead, it fell into disbelief. Without Boston, Indiana's defense cracked wide open, and the Aces took full advantage. What made it all sting even more was how the 2 stars played. Boston was disciplined, contesting without fouling, keeping her composure while the calls piled up against her. Wilson, on the other hand, leaned entirely on whistles to fuel her offense, drawing contact, flailing for attention, and heading to the line like clockwork. Fans saw it. Everyone did. Social media lit up with slowed-down clips, side-by-side comparisons, and frame-by-frame breakdowns of every bad call. Those 3 moments, the phantom screen, the flop, and the rebound call, didn't just define Game 5, they determined it. One of the league's best defenders was taken out by the refs, not by A'ja Wilson. And yet somehow, the Aces had the audacity to act like they overcame adversity. But Aaliyah did say I have a special whistle. She shot 13 today. She did that. Yeah, she said Alaska had a special whistle, which is cool. What do you call it when the team that benefits from every single whistle suddenly plays the victim? You call it the Las Vegas Aces playoff strategy, because that's exactly what unfolded after Game 4. When A'ja Wilson, standing at the podium with the poise of someone who just got every call all series, had the audacity to declare that the series was rigged. Let that sink in. The same player who spent 4 games living at the free throw line, now claiming that she's the one being targeted. Through 4 games, Wilson had 19 free throw attempts compared to Aaliyah Boston's 15. Despite Boston being the one absorbing the hard hits and relentless contact in the paint. Somehow, in Wilson's world, that still made her the victim. I was looking at the fouls. Liz had 5, Jackie had 5, Chelsea had 5. And that's very interesting to me, because I'm not saying we don't foul. Yeah, we foul here and there, but that's very interesting. The irony is almost insulting. Wilson's total fouls through those first 4 matchups, 12. Boston's, 14. And this isn't some random stat pulled from thin air. This is while Boston was taking on the toughest assignment of the entire series, guarding Wilson one-on-one on nearly every defensive trip. Meanwhile, Wilson was out there setting moving screens that would make a football coach blush, and the refs couldn't find their whistles if you handed them a map. Flip the script for a second. If Boston so much as grazed a guard on a pick, you'd see an official sprinting across the floor, pointing in the opposite direction. But when Wilson does it, silence. Play on. Nothing to see here. And it didn't stop with her. Becky Hammon, the Aces head coach, jumped on the same bandwagon. She picked up a technical foul in Game 4 for unloading on the officials, screaming about calls as though the universe itself was conspiring against her team. It wasn't an isolated outburst either. The Aces have made this behavior part of their brand. Whenever the pressure builds, they melt down, pointing fingers at the refs, the media, or anyone else who will listen. It's a pattern. Shift the focus away from their mistakes, play the "we're being targeted" card, and dare the officials to overcorrect. That's what made Wilson's post-game comments so transparently tactical. It wasn't frustration, it was a calculated move, perfectly timed before the decisive Game 5. She knew exactly what she was doing, planting a seed in the officials' minds, making them second-guess every whistle in favor of the Fever. And wouldn't you know it, it worked like a charm. In Game 5, the officiating swung so hard in Vegas's favor, it was almost comical. Boston fouled out on phantom contact. Wilson kept getting to the line like it was her personal ATM. And in the final 2 minutes of regulation and overtime, Las Vegas shot 13 free throws. 13. In 2 minutes. That's not basketball, that's theater. Are we really supposed to believe Wilson's rigged comment had no impact on that? Come on. The officiating went from bad to absurd the moment she played the victim. The message was clear. Keep the Aces comfortable, keep the narrative clean, and make sure the so-called face of the league moves on. But while Vegas worked the refs with politics and pressure, the Indiana Fever responded with something far more powerful. Grit. They didn't whine, they didn't scheme, they fought. Lexie Hull, Caitlin Clark, and Aaliyah Boston went to war with nothing but pride and heart, battling through tilted whistles and stacked odds. They refused to fold even as every call cut deeper. That's what made this series unforgettable. Not the Aces' manipulation, but the Fever's defiance. In Lexie's own words, this was such a physical series for her, where she found herself to the ground so many times, but she's proud of the team for coming far. Yeah, I mean, that's what Steph said in the huddle, like, or built for this moment, when Kelsey went down, and then we're challenging the call on 8B. We've been here before, so it's just so unlucky, so crazy, that had to happen tonight. The Fever didn't lose this series because they lacked skill. They lost because the Aces couldn't win without assistance. It wasn't talent that decided Game 5. It was a whistle. Still, Indiana walked away with something far more valuable: identity and purpose. Aaliyah Boston's "we over me" mantra captured their unity, while Caitlin Clark, cheering from the sidelines, made it clear this team's story is only beginning. The future looks unstoppable. But if the WNBA wants any credibility left, it owes the fans an answer. How 37 uncalled fouls robbed a young contender of its rightful shot at glory. Let us know down in the comments what you think of A'ja's special whistle.